7 o'clock, and we'll call this Bay City Zoning Board of Appeals regular meeting of April 8th to order. Introduction of the members. To my left, Larry Elliott. To my immediate left is Chris Greenleaf. I'm William Darby. To my near right is Doug Rise, and to my far right is Jan Rise. First item is the approval of the minutes for the December 10th, 2024 meeting. Is there any comment? Is there a motion?
Make the motion to approve.
There's a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Support.
There's a motion to approve with support. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those not in favor say nay. 5 yea, no nay. Now is the time for public comment for anybody that might be desirous of saying something to the board that is not here for public input for any or either one of the two items that are up. Is there someone who'd like to talk to the board for some reasons other than the two items on the agenda? Hearing none, we'll go into new business. First item is case Z 2501 for 900 6th Street on behalf of Melvin Correa. There's three items to the request. The first item is the appellant is requesting a non-use variance from section 122-303, requiring a minimum side yard setback of 5 feet. The appellant is proposing to split the property and is requesting 2.3 feet from the new property line to the building. Second portion is the appellant is requesting a non-use variance from section 122-482(4), requiring all institutional uses maintain a minimum setback of 10 feet from any lot in a residential district. The most recent use of the existing structure was an institutional use requiring the non-use variance. Third portion of that request is the appellant is requesting a non-use variance from section 122-303, which limits maximum lot coverage to 35% in the R2 single and two-family zoning district. The proposed new parcel would exceed this lot coverage maximum. Is Mr. Correa or a representative here to, can you come up to the podium, please, and tell us why we should grant you these variants?
Yes, what we're proposing.
Before you do that, can you sign in, please?
Sign in. Okay. What we're proposing is to split the church off from the house and on the other side, split the parking lot off. Okay, we're looking at splitting off the church and the parking lot to the east of the house, keeping them as one, so there'd be ample parking for the church people and everything to use. And the house itself, we would be renovating and selling that off. So basically just a split off right there.
So am I correct in that the church and the parking lot would be non-connected? Is that right?
Correct, which they are now.
Okay. questions, comments? Thank you. Oh,
Yes, in regards to the 2.3 feet from the east property line, I drove by there today and noticed I'm trying to figure out exactly where that 2.3 feet comes from, because the staircase coming from the back of the current church actually goes into the driveway of what would essentially be parcel B. So where are we measuring 2.3 feet from?
The steps are going to be turned and coming straight off the door, so they'll be set back in actually into the property of the church. Hopefully next week that will be done.
Okay, thank you. So that answers that question. Thank you.
So, to piggyback with Larry's question, at this point, you have an egress that is probably 2.3 feet from where we're gonna divide this, but you have steps there,
Yes,
so the steps will be removed, and then is this egress needed because of the configuration of the church?
no, the steps are going to be turned. They won't be removed. We're going to
So
probably.
you're gonna turn them so they're only 2 feet
Correct.
wide?
No, to where they're set back in, to where when you walk down that exit door and everything, you'll go straight down the door instead of going toward the driveway. You'll go right back toward the back of the lot.
That door is how far off the ground?
I'm not sure, probably about 48 inches. There'll still be steps there, the cement steps and everything there, just relocating them the direction-wise.
So in session, the steps are going to remain the same size. You're just going to turn them.
Correct.
Go straight off instead of having
Exactly.
to turn to make like a 90-degree angle before you go down.
Correct.
So it's going to be actually a little bit safer. to go.
Correct.
All right.
Question, Bill? I note in the staff's write-up on this that it was requested of you to have modified drawings submitted because the drawings that you've submitted don't show the proper footprint of the building itself, and nor does it show this encroachment that you're talking about moving. And we really need to have those before we can make a decision.
Okay, that's no problem. I just got back into town, and whatever you guys need, we can take care of. That's no problem.
right, if I'm understanding correctly, and I've got a brain fart as far as, where do the stairs come out of the eastern wall and go what direction currently?
The door actually, I would say, goes to the south, and then you step out onto the steps, and they go down to the east. So what we would be doing is just resituating the steps to where you come out the door and go directly south.
Are you telling me then that the steps are, in a sense, located to the west of the existing garage?
Yes.
I thought they existed coming out of the east property, but maybe I'm wrong on that.
No. It would be on it would be coming off the back that kicks out, and I believe it goes to the south, where the steps would be going straight down off the door then, instead of making that jog and going to the driveway.
Okay, I was, somehow I had them coming out the east wall. Okay,
No.
they're coming out the south wall, at
Correct.
the little indentation there.
And they'll continue right straight down to the south,
It was my error.
which would make more sense anyways.
I guess to staff, if we have a 2.3-foot setback, so, because we're dividing the distance between the church and the garage, right? Correct?
That is correct, yes.
So if you have to have that setback, then nothing can be put in that setback as far as structurally, right?
Correct, yes. The drawing reflects the closest setback being the 2.3, so that's what was used. The distance between where the property line jogs on the survey drawing, between that little corner indentation or that little jut that we're talking about where the stairs are at, it shows 2.9, and then it widens out to 6.7.
So
there-
technically, we couldn't have steps in that 2.3,
Correct, steps
to
could
use
not
that
be in the
egress.
2.3.
correct?
Correct, yes. Nothing could be within the nothing structurally could be within the 2.3
And
foot setback.
Okay,
nothing would
thank you.
be within the 2.3 with the steps turned.
Which is why we need to see the engineered drawing on it.
I have another question regarding that. Even if you take the steps down straight south, it's going to end at the back corner roughly of the property, and let's say down the road, the landowner of parcel B decides they wish to put a fence right along that driveway. Anybody coming out of that back door then gets trapped outside? Because there's nowhere,
No,
there would
if
be
you go
nowhere
to
for
the
them to
back of the
go.
building, there's access to go down the side of it there.
Down what side? The south side?
In between the next door neighbor's fence and the building.
So within that 2.5, you're the 2 feet, basically, 2.3 feet. Someone would have to walk through.
I'm not,
I'm not saying right now, I'm saying down the road, if someone wants to put a fence up along the edge of that driveway,
right.
how is somebody going to walk out the back door, down the steps, and then they can't get out to Van Buren Street? They'd have to actually try to get back out to Sixth Street.
Well, they'd be able to get to Van Buren, but they wouldn't be able to get to Sixth.
Is there enough room there? Okay, I didn't think there was enough room back there when I drove by there, so that's what was confusing me. Thank you.
I guess my question is for staff. It sounds like there's a few here that would want to see like renderings of the property, what's going to happen. Is that something we can request and postpone this until that is provided?
If the zoning board of appeals is requesting any drawings, that could be a condition of like resubmitted drawings. Like if there's questions about the existing survey drawings or if additional examples of what the final configuration of the property is going to look like, the ZBA can request that as part of its postponement.
On your application and when you filled this out,
Yes.
parts of this I can't read. I can't read it. Do you want to have a chance to clarify it, or?
Sure, can I see it? Even the copy? Number one just says that the the house will be sold separately, and I'm sorry. Yep. Okay. This just says that the house will be sold separately, and the church and the parking lot will remain together. Number one. And number two is she ready?
I think number 2 is fine. What's number 3 say?
So it just says that we want to sell the house separately from the church and the parking lot.
Number 4?
Basically the same as 3, just saying that the church and the parking lot would be sold separately, together.
My question is for the board here. I guess, what are you guys' opinions if we postpone this to our next meeting? They can clarify their writing. They can provide a site plan so we can make a educated decision based on the criteria that they'll bring forth to our next meeting. 'Cause if we're having a hard time reading the writing, we can't make a decision based on that, and plus the site plan drawings and renderings.
I also would like to see the drawings corrected, and I'd like to see what is intended for the east egress from the back of the church.
Okay.
Where you're asking for the variance on the setback. I want to see how that would look if we grant this.
Okay. That's fine.
Before we do that, though, I would like, there's other people here that I would like to give them an opportunity to speak, so that if for some reason they can't make it back next month, that we do at least have their comments.
The audience, you mean? Yeah, the audience? Yeah, okay, yeah.
There will still be a public comment portion of the meeting as required, since it is a public hearing, so we'd still move forward after the applicant's presentation is completed. We would move to public comment.
Right, but I believe, if I'm understanding correctly, Mr. Greenleaf is saying he wishes to table this for a month, which I believe would then end the need for public comment tonight. So if, I would prefer that we have the public comment tonight, at least for those that are here. Obviously, we would have to have another public comment next month as well. That way, if for some reason someone can't make it back next month, that's here tonight and wishes to speak, they're given that opportunity, if that makes sense.
Yes, what I was saying was that legally we would be required to have public comment tonight because we can't make a motion to postpone, approve, deny, table unless public comment occurs. So yes.
All right, thank you.
It's kind of discombobulated, but shall we, are we through with the presentation of the presenters at this point? And to go into open session or a public hearing on the comments?
I'll make the motion to go into public comment.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
All those in favor of going into public comment, say aye.
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 All those opposed, say nay. Okay. Thank you. We may call you back before the night is over, so please don't leave. Anyone in the audience want to come up to the podium, sign in, and make comments on this particular item about the splitting of the lots?
Hello, my name is Benjamin Champagne. I am a resident of Saginaw. However, I am the interested party in seeing that it is split. And I think regardless of what happens to me in my zoning request, I think it would be good to split that property so that he has the opportunity to sell the house to a family that could use it, and so that somebody that can use the church, myself, would be able to use that along with the parking lot. So I definitely support that. I look forward to seeing the drawings get amended so that they reflect the work that Melvin's doing. He has a long history of rehabbing these places, and that neighborhood has a lot of historic homes that are going to fall into disrepair if they don't go to a family that is going to take care of that. And I think that's going to produce greater stability for that area and for Bay City as a whole. So I think regardless of my result, I definitely support seeing his case go through. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other comments on this from the audience? Okay. We close the public hearing on this particular item and seek a motion.
Excuse me, do we have to acknowledge the written comments?
Those for case 2. For Z2502, those were the comments for that case. There were no written or phone comments received for 2501.
Written comments are for the next hearing.
Sorry, thank you.
Move to close public hearing?
I'll second.
Been a motion to close public hearing and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. 5 yea, no nay.
Make of the business portion?
Before we have the next hearing,
We haven't approved a motion to delay
I'll make that motion.
this pending additional information.
okay, there's a motion to delay the hearing until the presentation of additional information as requested.
Point of order, Bill. The formal motion should be made by the motion maker. I believe there's, it can't just be a verbal, it has to be a formal verbal motion.
Okay,
I'll make the motion that we postpone this case number Z2501 to our next zoning board of appeals meeting in the month of May, to give the appellant their right to supply us with renderings and better clarification of their written statement, so we can make a educated decision based on their needs.
there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second to, in essence, delay till next month pending receipt of additional information. All those in favor of the motion say yea. Yea.
Aye.
Does that have to be roll call for the motion?
I wasn't going to do one, but we can do a roll call. Do a roll call.
Mr. Elliott?
Yes.
Mr. Greenleaf?
Yes.
Mr. Rise?
Yes.
Ms. Rise? Mr. Darby?
Aye.
Yes, 5 yea, no nay. Next item on the agenda is Case number Z2502 for 900 6th Street. Request of the appellant is to use a variance from section 122-102 that would, if granted, authorize the establishment of an event facility in the R2 single and two-family residential zoning district. Equivalent uses would include indoor commercial recreation, theater, cinema, retail, and community meeting space. Event facilities are not permitted in the R2 single and two-family residential zoning district, but are permitted in the C2A, C2B, and C3 zoning districts. The appellant must obtain a use variance from R2 single and two-family zoning district regulations to establish an event facility with the additional uses outlined. Mr. Champagne can come up and spout your reasons as to why this should occur.
Sign in again.
Yes, please.
All right, yeah, my name is Benjamin Champagne. I am interested in a zoning variance to allow the use of assembly for the church. I think that we all understand that churches were built for the purpose of assembly. That is what they're good at doing. And currently, as the economy changes, we're seeing churches just kind of go into disrepair all throughout the Midwest and anywhere. And they become pretty difficult to use in their capacity that they were designed to be used. And so therefore, I think that changing it to an event hall and a place for assembly would be great. The fact that this has a parking lot makes it beneficial to the neighborhood. Almost all events will be able to utilize just that and shouldn't strain the neighborhood whatsoever. I have a lot of experience in this. I've been running concerts for about 10 years. Nationwide, I used to tour, and now I currently work for the Temple Theater and the Saginaw Art Museum. I do this professionally. I ran a place in Saginaw for 5 years that concluded right before the pandemic, and so I have wanted to do something like that again in this area, the Saginaw Bay City area. I'm very well connected to the music and art culture here. I think that the benefits to the neighborhood are going to be seen economically and culturally. I think that that Bay City has proven to be a thriving place over the last few years with some tourism bumps in the summer and just a good culture for art and music. So I think this would be a great place for this. There is nothing like this in Saginaw, Bay City, Midland, which we're talking in the area of a 400 or 500 cap music club. The demand for that is there. However, it's not there in the way that, say, Detroit or Grand Rapids would be there. Therefore, you're not going to have the kind of thing where it's 5 nights a week. You're going to have something where it occurs at the larger level half a dozen times a year at best, and you're going to have these very small events that will probably be in the basement or other places that will fill a smaller need for a smaller city. And again, there isn't really a great place that's dedicated to music alone. A lot of the places are bars. Myself, as a sober person, I think that when we put art and music into a place that is dedicated to it, you actually get a better culture out of that. It doesn't say that we wouldn't serve alcohol on occasions through special licenses and things like that, but for the most part, it would probably serve a different type of community, and I think that would revolutionize the neighborhood, revolutionize downtown, being close to that. I can see it as being a total benefit, and I guess as far as the zoning for this particular, again, I'll just go back to the fact that this is what churches were designed for, and I think that it would be very popular. I think if people saw that they could see a concert in a beautiful church with a pike organ behind it or things like that. This church also has a lot of infrastructure in it that already makes it good to go as far as just different rooms for people to prepare in, bathrooms, an elevator, things of that nature. So I think that presents my case pretty fully and hopefully connects some dots and some questions that you might have.
Are there any questions of the presenter?
So I see in your application that you anticipate you could have gatherings of 200 to 400 people?
Yeah, I think at the high end, yeah, 400, probably, I would
So
like,
you're thinking wedding receptions or
we could
something
be
of that
doing-
nature? Where are you going to park people?
yeah, so the parking spot has 30 spaces, which would allow for, probably get us easily into the hundreds. The rest would probably have to go to street parking or parking a few blocks down in downtown.
Thank you.
Question to the applicant?
Yeah.
Have you had an opportunity to check with the local fire marshal on what the maximum allowed occupancy of this building would be?
No, I'm because I work in the industry, I'm aware of the ratings. They're usually they take for seated gatherings, they take the square footage of a room and they divide it by 12. For seated like amphitheater style, they take the square footage and they divide it by 7. And then for standing room only, they take the square footage and they divide it by 5. And then usually the person in my position will knock that number down quite a bit in order to stay safe if you ever were to get to a position where you sell that many tickets. So I haven't, but I would definitely do my diligence if this gets passed, absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
So what's the square footage of the church?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay. That's the same issue we're having with the drawings, because they're not accurate.
It's fair, I understand that.
And to the egress, too, also applies to you, what we talked about
Absolutely.
in the first
Yeah.
case.
Yep, absolutely, and that would be needed
So
for fire escape.
yeah, so I'm not sure if we can make a decision tonight, because we don't have that information.
Yeah, to my knowledge, his has to be passed in order for mine to be passed, so I expect that, I understand that. Yeah. To answer the question though, to the number, without knowing the square footage, is mine was a ballpark estimate, and if I think that I said in my application many times, but I didn't state it here, is we will follow all, rules and regulations. So once I get that number, that will be the number that we abide by, of course. That's for granted. But I'm pretty sure that my number will be pretty close. I'm pretty good at ballparking that stuff.
Other questions of the applicant?
How often per week do you expect to have concerts or events that is obviously going to impact neighbors as far as noise?
Yeah, so I think you'd actually be surprised at how much baffling you can get with sound. Just for an example here, I ran a music venue in Saginaw, and I'm a landlord, and I actually was living in one of the apartments nearby, and this was in the same building, and when it was at about 100 decibels sustained, it sounded like a loud radio through my wall, and that was in the building. So I think that work will have to be done in order to help dampen that, but I think that when there are events that are in the basement, I think it will be, my guess is that it will be barely perceptible if it's in the basement, and I think the larger shows, which I had alluded to, could happen maybe, say, 6 times a year, that would actually be up in the congregation hall. Those could be a little louder, and it may sound like someone's playing a loud radio or something like that, but we would abide by the noise ordinances and have that done, and we could work to put in sound dampening and all that kind of stuff.
Other questions?
Sorry. So if this is approved, you would have the church, and then separately you would have the parking lot.
Yes.
I guess my question is, how do we make sure those two stay together down the road?
Absolutely, that's a great question. I believe Melvin's plan has a plan for that, and I agree with that. I think that without the parking lot, the church would become useless to any commercial investor. I'm certainly okay with abiding by that. I think when I was working with some of the staff, they had made a suggestion that in this, the first case here, that you probably would set in some sort of byline that ties the church and the parking lot together. I don't think that interrupts Melvin's plan at all for creating a home for people. But I agree. I think that the church and the parking lot, no matter if I go through or not, they need to be tied together for your city. I mean, if you have a church floating with no parking lot, it becomes, now you got a rotting church, basically.
Okay, question to staff then is, how do we remedy that he can't sell the parking lot separate from the church or the church separate from the parking lot? How do we remedy that?
So that was part of the first case, and the notes from the case report talked about some sort of mechanism that the ZBA could require as part of a motion if they were to approve the lot division, stating that the appellant needed to provide some form of, whether that's a deed restriction tying the two properties together, or some form of an easier, perhaps, document to draft would be some sort of mutual parking agreement, which would be signed basically with the owner of the two properties with themselves, saying that it's recorded at the Register of Deeds, saying that the church property has access to the parking lot, regardless of ownership. So even if it was to be sold, anybody that utilized the church would be able to utilize the parking. That's the only thing that I can see from a legal standpoint. You have two separate properties to say that they're tied. There's not really a good way to tie them permanently, since you can't have they can't become one parcel because they are separated by that house. There's no way to split the house off and have the parking lot and the church be on the same parcel or the same boundaries. So you have to tie them in some legal manner, or just trust that, if somebody was to sell the parking lot off, they would be self-creating an issue where the church would have no available off-street parking for any future user.
And we can put that in our approval of the variance, that has to be done?
You can, yeah. There can be land-related stipulations in your motion saying that the parking is required to be provided for the church or for the future use of the church, or for if you're approving the split, you could say that the parking lot needs to have some sort of legal arrangement tying the parking to the church parcel. So I believe it was parcel A and parcel C in those descriptions.
Thank you.
I think that could also have a non-development agreement for the parking lot, so that the parking lot couldn't be built upon separate and apart from whether it's owned by the church or church people, whoever it is, so that there would be a non-development for the parking to be used as parking for that parcel, so it can be tied in.
Without, I personally don't have familiarity with that. In the staff report, it provided examples of mechanisms I was personally familiar with that have been used to tie parking lots or off-street parking to a property, or to have shared or mutual access agreements for parking. It was recommended that the applicant provide some sort of, or speak with an attorney to provide some sort of document for that. So there's, I leave it at the discretion of the zoning board to determine if there's, as a condition, what mechanism they would want to see provided as part of that.
We might ask the proposed developer, to submit a draft of what he might look at too, so that we might have that as a starting point too.
You're saying as part of this case, this
Yes.
2502?
Yes. Assuming that it becomes favorable, then part of the motion could have a condition that he would submit a non-development type agreement for that particular parcel. If he doesn't get the variance, then there will be no need for it. So I don't know if I'm making myself clear.
No, I follow.
Okay. Now I think
One question. In your submittal for your application, you note several different types of events that you would be providing through this facility. You're not isolating this to any one particular type of an event? There'll be,
No.
you're calling it an event center, so it could literally be just about anything that is a large gathering of people.
Yeah, it is a large category. I mentioned many of the things that we would procure from the position of the owner or establishment. So things like film screenings, yoga, workshops, which could be art workshops. I think that these would have a negligible effect on anybody or the neighborhood. You know, these are things where there's going to be 5 or 6 people in a room doing craft night, which is essentially not much different than the church. I think to address maybe a question that could be at the heart of your question would be if we rent this event, the building out to somebody else. And so I think that that would still fall within all of those types of uses. I don't think in this case we would be doing anything that would say like an industrial workshop or something, you know, where you're burning metals or, you know, anything like that would not be. These would all be relegated to cultural uses. So poetry readings and film screenings and book clubs and things of that nature. Does that make sense?
And concerts that could have up to 400 people.
Which is why I started there and made that, because I think that's the one that has the largest impact. And so I just wanted to emphasize that and be transparent. Yeah.
So question to staff regarding your addressing section 122, 103 special approval uses, where you reference back our off-street parking requirements. We would have to utilize the highest occupancy use of the building in determining the parking that's needed. Correct?
No, that is not correct. The parking, as when a use variance is presented to the Zoning Board of Appeals, they're looking at a property as is, so the building as it exists and the parking facilities that exist currently. And I provided the parking table as an example of if you were to take a use that was presented on a greenfield site where someone was building brand new and would have to comply with 100% of the ordinance requirements as part of the construction. Those are the standards they would have to comply with. If as a part of the use variance review, you can look at those examples, but you're not required to hold a use variance to those same standards because there's existing facilities. And that's why there was mention, I believe, of the example of parking facilities being not on the same parcel as the church building. They can be, as long as the facilities are within 100 feet within that R2 residential zoning district, they can be utilized by the use.
You also noted in that discussion that while it would meet the standards of section 122, 103A, you also note and obtain a special use approval from the Planning Commission. Is this something that the Planning Commission is going to see after we act on it?
It is not, no. The special use standards were provided as an example of when you are reusing a public or quasi-public building like a school, a church, a fire station. If you are reusing that and it is zoned R1 or R2, there are additional uses available to converting public buildings under the special use approval process. You can utilize RM1 or O1 zoning district uses within the R2 or R1 zoning district with a special use approval. So that was an example of how church buildings have, churches, schools have additional uses available to them. The use variance is coming before you because the uses proposed by the appellant fall outside of those special approved uses. But the use variance would approve the use for the property. It would not require a special use or an additional planning commission approval unless there was something else proposed by the appellant that required site plan review or approval by the planning commission.
Thank you.
I think now is the time to open it for public input. So we close the formal portion of the presentation and make a motion to open it to the public for input.
I'll make the motion to close and then open for public input.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of closing it and opening it, closing the presentation portion and opening it to public input, say aye.
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 All those opposed, say nay. 5 yea, no nay. Now is the time for anyone in the audience who would like to speak on either one of these issues to come forward, sign in, and express your approval, disapproval, or comments as seen fit.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Joshua Dawson. This is my wife, Jeannie Dawson. We're also accompanied by our neighbors, Claire Gregory and her daughter, Susan. We own the properties at 617 North Van Buren, 621 North Van Buren, and 911 6th Street. So basically right on both sides of the church. I want to thank Benjamin for sending out this card, kind of describing what his plan was with how he was going to use the space. And I think a lot of us are in agreement that we're happy to see something happen with the church, that it doesn't just go into disrepair and it doesn't just, crumble. In our neighborhood, there's a lot of vacant lots because of houses that have burned down or houses that have been demolished. The property we own at 621 North Van Buren Street was a house at one point in time that was demolished, that was a community garden for a while. And I think a lot of the things that Benjamin has talked about in here are really positive things. Film screenings, art exhibits, poetry, yoga, financial literacy programs, educational programs, things like that. I think a lot of that are really good things that we would like to have in our neighborhood. But then we come to, what we you were discussing earlier with these large events. And, some of the things that I heard Benjamin say up here earlier, in this, he says, larger events, max 400 to 500 people. There's 24 parking spots in that parking lot. There is an apartment building, kitty corner to the parking lot, that has 0 parking for the apartment building. They all park on the street. We have Smith Manor right around the corner. They're all parking on the street. Each one of those streets around on 6th, Van Buren, and Grant, you can park on one side of the street. So it's already congested with parking on the street. And so that creates an issue. Then we have the Masonic Temple down the street, which also is housing events of hundreds of people. And that's only 3 blocks away. Which is 3 blocks away. And that, when they have big events, that starts bleeding parking into our neighborhood. And so that's, I think, one of the major concerns is how is this parking going to be in our neighborhood? I mean, it's already lots of people parking on the street. I know for me personally, we have 2 vehicles, plus we have 2 sons with 2 vehicles, and they park on the street. If my son comes home from work at 10 o'clock at night because he works late and there's an event going on, where does he park? He's going to be blocks away walking home to, the house. In this pamphlet that he sent out, it says, these will be rare about 4 times a year, but now I hear 6 times a year. So now I'm already concerned that, okay, just in the 2-3 days that we've read this to what we've heard, now we have it going higher. What happens if it's not doing well financially and he has to have more larger events? What happens at that point? What recourse do we have as residents in the area to say, hey, this is not what was proposed originally? How do we handle that? And I think as the city, that's something that that I would like to know. If this starts exceeding what the promised idea was, what recourse do we have as residents of the area? These are all historic homes. They're large homes. There's not that many of us in that area. We can't generate a large outcry if there's, noise ordinances, because there's only 6 of us. So that's some of the concerns that we have. We love the idea of a lot of this stuff. I think it's fantastic stuff. But these large events are really what scare us.
Especially with the alcohol involved.
That's another
We live
thing.
in a neighborhood where there are children.
Point of order.
Hold on.
I don't wanna
sorry.
be-
Hold on,
Only one
hold
speaker
on.
at a time, please.
Now, you can have your time after.
Oh, okay, we weren't sure, sorry.
Yeah, so the alcohol thing, that's an issue as well, is that we have a lot of small children in the area. I know when there are large events in the area, whether it be the St. Patrick's Day Parade or a lot of the things that are going on in the area because we're close to downtown, there's trash all over the place after every single one of those things. And I mean, obviously, he would be required to clean up after that, but if there's people out in the parking lot drinking before they go into the show because they're not selling alcohol in the show. Now there's, we've lived there for 15 years. Claire's lived there for a lot longer than us. And this neighborhood was bad when we moved in. It was bad. There was vacant houses everywhere. The apartment building on the corner was people selling drugs outside of it all day long, every day. It's now finally starting to come back where we've got families moving into these houses. We've got people investing. There's hundreds of thousands, if not $1 million+ in that 2-block radius that have been invested by people living in this neighborhood to see the neighborhood go up, to see everything get better. We already went through nonsense with the Ingersoll stuff and all of those houses going back, and we've dealt with a lot of the problems. And we want to make sure that if this gets passed and these things are not adhered to, what do we have as recourse as residents to come back and say, hey, this is not working because of all the people who live in the neighborhood? We're here, Claire and her daughter are here, that's it. This is, it's like, and I just need to know how do we handle that if the situation presents itself like that? What happens if, take pictures, report it to the city? And then what happens if he sells it, if it doesn't do well and he sells it? Does this special use variance need to be applied for by the new purchaser of the property? I don't know the answer to that. But I would like to know the answer to that. Does that transfer to the new person? Does that stay with the property? Or does that new person have to come in and go through this whole process again? Because what he's telling us may not be what happens in the future. Let me look and see if I've got anything else here that I did not touch on. No. I think from my standpoint, I think that's about it. I don't know if you guys can answer questions tonight or if that's a separate type of scenario.
For all practical purposes, it's separate. We don't know if we're going to pass it, not pass it, or what's going to happen in the future, so we don't know what's going to happen until we actually have a time to make a decision. So that's obviously not tonight.
Yeah. So if it goes and gets approved, that would be at the next meeting. You would vote to approve.
At some future meeting, I won't tell you. it's gonna be
Maybe
at the
not next meeting, but if it does get
future.
approved. Okay. All right. And I do believe that my wife had submitted an email that may be what you were talking about from Jeannie Dawson. I'm not sure if that's one of the things that was submitted that you were talking about. It was written out. We didn't know if we would be able to attend or not.
Staff can address that. There was public comment received. They did receive that, yes.
Okay, so that's very similar to the things that we just talked about here,
I have
so.
a couple more things I would like to touch on. So my husband works a lot, he's out of
You
town.
sign in?
Yes, I did.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm a stay-at-home mom. I've raised 2 kids in this neighborhood. When the church was a church, during the day they would sing and we could hear them. which was not a bother because it was church and it happened during the day, so it was all when we were up. So I'm concerned about the noise. I'm concerned not only from the noise from the people in the place, but if they're serving alcohol and they're walking in front of my house and there's dozens of them walking back and forth, how are, like, they're gonna cause noise while we're sleeping. They're gonna make our dogs bark. They're gonna cause a lot of, chaos. I'm also worried about crime. In our neighborhood, we've had people, steal stuff off our porch. We've had people break into our cars. So is parole gonna be up? Are they gonna have security? These are just some things as a mother. I know my kids are grown, they're 18 and 24, but the new people moving next door have small children. The new people across the parking lot in the greenhouse have 2 small children. And I just want to make sure that we remember that we need to keep this safe for our residents. So that was one thing that kind of concerned me. I don't mind it being like an event center. I mean, it does need to be something. Somebody's going to turn it into something. It just can't sit there. But I just wanted to voice my concerns. And I know I sent you the email, and it touched on noise and crime and parking especially. I mean, with the bridges shut, that corner on Madison and Center, it's hard to get from out of our houses anyway. And then when the Masonic Temple has something or there's something else going on, there's tons of traffic there. So that has to deal with like emergency. Like, what if we need an ambulance? What if we need a fire department? Just because they're down the road, it's gonna be harder for them to get to us. Those are just some things I would like you to consider as you're, thinking about this. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to say something on this issue? I hear none, so motion to close the public hearing at this meeting.
I'll make the motion to close.
There's a motion to close public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of closing the public portion of the meeting, say aye.
Aye.
All those not in favor, say nay. 5 yea, no nay. Now is the time, I think we are at a time when we need to make a motion to adjourn the hearings determination on both of these pending receipt of, I'm going to call it a better prepared and more informational drawing of the 2 requests.
A motion was already made for the first case. We are only deciding the
Second case.
So if there's a motion to be made by the Zoning Board of Appeals with any sort of conditions, this would be the time to make said motion and to state what the Zoning Board of Appeals would like to see from the applicant.
Maybe. Okay. I'll open it up to anything at this point.
I would like to, since our appellant didn't know the square foot church, I would like to have that information, and I would like it to include how the church will be divided and utilized, meaning if there's separate rooms for this, or if it's one big room. I would like to have that information when we come back to this, if that's what we decide. Because like I said, we don't know the square footage of the church at all. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Other information?
I have a question for staff.
Yes.
Can we, going off what Jan just said about what each particular room is gonna be used for, we can't have a say in that, correct? Or can we?
No, not of the individual rooms, just of the uses permitted on the property. If there's stipulations to be placed on a use variance being granted, if that's a direction that the zoning board of appeals chose to take, you can stipulate the uses being permitted, hours of operation, other site plan review or site-related standards. But the individual use of rooms within the structure, I'm not familiar with a zoning board putting stipulations on that in particular.
Okay, thank you. I guess I'll make a motion to adjourn this case, Z 2502, till our next meeting when we meet to hear the other previous case, with the additional information that Ms. Rise asked about square footage of the church, so we can make a better educated decision on this variance.
As a clarification, use the term adjourn, is the intent to postpone until?
Postpone till our next meeting.
Could I request of the motion maker if we could add up-to-date survey drawings also, so that they're properly reflect the footprint of the building itself?
Yes, we can, I can add that.
That's Mark's motion.
Been a motion to delay the next hearing on this until the presentation of the materials to staff. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so it may or may not be the next regular meeting of the ZBA, depending upon the applicant's information being presented to the staff. There's a motion to adjourn subject to, no, there's a motion to accept that. Is that correct? Did we already vote on that?
The second, that motion.
I believe Mr. Rise seconded the motion.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Yeah, to postpone the meeting till the information as requested is presented to staff and it can be properly noticed up for a meeting. All those in favor, let's have all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. 5 yea, no nay. Is there any other business?
None at this time from staff.
Say that again, I didn't hear that.
Oh, sorry, none at this time from staff.
Okay, not at this time, okay.
Don't have any applicants for next month?
We do have one applicant at this time for next month,
Okay.
so there will be a meeting. I believe it is May 12th, if I'm not mistaken, but I'll double check.
If there's no new business or other business, now's the time for an adjournment motion.
Move to adjourn.
I'll second.
There's been a motion to adjourn and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. 5 yea, no nay.